So while we impatiently wait our last few days for a game that's been anticipated for I think 8 years or so now, maybe even a little bit longer, I want to talk a little bit about how to have the best gaming experience while playing Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I am a big believer that the audio in a game is going to be huge for its replayability and its enjoyability while you're playing it. And I believe that I've determined what the best headphone for this game is going to be. So I'm going to tell you what it is, some options that I think are close but not quite on the money, and why I chose the headphone that I chose. So the best headphone is, I think, going to be the 3.8X for a couple of reasons. Aesthetically, actually has nothing to do with it. It's just kind of a happy coincidence that it's got kind of that cyberpunk yellow coloration to it. But I think it's much more about what's happening in between the two cups that makes this perfect for that game. So for me, there is a breakdown between immersive gaming headphones and functional gaming headphones, or useful or kind of more, tactical gaming headphones, I would say. So in basic terms, what you want from a competitive gaming headphone is accurate directionality of sound and accurate distance of sound. And if you have those two things covered, the best that you can get them covered, you're going to have the best possible result. But each game is a little bit different. It's different in terms of the general sound design. Some sound design is a little bit more top-end heavy. Some are a little bit more low-end heavy. Some are a little bit more mid-rangey. Some have better sound design for sound staging. Some have worse sound design for sound staging. So you really have to ebb and flow what headphones you're using for each game. There's no one size fits all headphone. Now the 3.8X I think is probably the best of a lot of different worlds here, and is probably at least a top player in almost every game out there. But with Cyberpunk, as of right now, it's entirely single player. So I'm not focused on the competitive advantages of certain headphones. I'm focused more on the immersive advantages of certain headphones, and also some of the functionality that you may or may not need. For example, this microphone on this particular game is not really going to be all that useful. So while it's great that it's there, if this headphone didn't have a microphone at all, it would still be my top pick. It's also easy to drive, so you don't need an amplifier to run it. So you can run it off of just your TV output or your computer onboard audio. This is going to be a very easy, very useful headphone to get. I think this should be on the top of everybody's priority list. Okay, so I want to break down a little bit of how I decided this particular headphone for the sound design that I've seen so far and that I've heard so far. So this game is not out yet. So all of my decisions so far have been leading up to the style of game that it is, where I think the majority of your sound focus should be, and all the footage that has been released so far of the game. And I've been listening to that, listening to basically every trailer that's available so far, and listening to a bunch of different headphones to basically break down what I think sounds the best, sounds the most immersive, and then on top of that, what I think the majority of this game is going to sound like. So for me, for single player games, when directionality is not important, bass is a big thing. Bass is the difference between your guns, your cars, your planes, your explosions, your thuds. That's the difference between a sound being isolated in a specific position and a sound sounding big. And from Sennheiser's tuning lineup, this is actually one of the warmer headphones that they have out there, and it actually has some of the strongest bass performance of their mid-range line of headphones. This includes the 3.7X, this includes the 560S, this includes the 6XX, the 5.8X, and so on and so forth. So this has great bass response, great underlying sub bass that is going to allow those thuds, that realistic city noise, to seem a bit more realistic than it otherwise would. Now, initially I thought I was going to go with a more clinical headphone like a Beyerdynamic, because this apparently has very, very good sound design. There's lots of crispy little notes to pick up on, but I found that the 3.8X was more than satisfying for all those crispy little, sliding stock motions and the sounds of the explosions, but I found it not fatiguing in the top end. And I think this is a game that a lot of people who like single players, like myself, are going to invest a lot of hours in long sessions. And I think not having a fatiguing top end is probably going to be pretty important. Now, because this game is made by CD Projekt Red, who also made The Witcher, I'm also anticipating quite a bit of dialogue. And Sennheisers are pretty good for very smooth and very engaging vocals. And this makes for really immersive dialogue. This makes for exceptional dialogue where you're not really going to be like picking up the sounds of the studio booth that they were recorded in, like you might with a Beyerdynamic that can kind of take you out of that immersion. So I think the 3.8X is really honing down on like a super immersive style of gameplay sound. And that's exactly what I am looking for, especially in a single player. Now, does this make it bad for multiplayer games and more competitive games? Absolutely not. This is actually really exceptional at being both competitive and immersive simultaneously. But I think because the sound design of this game, I think it's going to play up that immersive capability really well. The main factor as to why this headphone is immersive, it's not the bass response, it's not the treble clarity, it's not the mid-range. It's actually the sound staging shape and the scale that everything has on this headphone. This headphone has very abnormal soundstage and scale capability for most headphones. So take this 9500 for example, which is a great budget option. If you're looking for something like $75, this is probably what I would recommend getting. This has great soundstage. It's also got really good imaging. It's got great immersive placement, but this does have some other problems, like the top end of vocals are a little bit sharp. The S region is a little bit sharp. And so if you're going for just ultimate enjoyability, this is very, very good for the price, but it's not perfect. And if we're picking a perfect headphone, I don't think it's this one. The soundstage is one of the more notable aspects as to why this headphone is great. That headphone is better at sound staging and it's more accurate at sound staging, especially in terms of variability and more importantly, scale. So I think from the trailers I've seen, the size of the city is going to it seems like they've done a really good job in creating a auditory environment. You need a pair of headphones that's able to display that pretty well. And I feel like the 38X just does that a lot better than a lot of the other competitors at the price range. So for example, this is the Lightspeed G Pro Wireless. I don't like the sound quality of this headphone very much, especially when it comes to music. It's not really made for that. This has a lot of features that I don't think are necessary for a single player game, but are of course nice to have, like the microphone and everything like that. But the scale of soundstage is not that impressive. This has directionality down, but that distance factor, that kind of realistic size factor that the 38X has, this really doesn't have. So for me, when I'm playing an immersive game, this headphone doesn't add to that immersion at all. And that is a very popular, equally, actually a little bit more priced headphone to that of the 38X. But when it comes to sound, the 38X, just listening to the commercials that are out there right now, just pulls ahead of the entire pack. I think it's a really great option for Cyberpunk. So that's going to be my recommendation. I usually get lots of these questions about what headphone is best for this game or that game. So I wanted this to be kind of a video that I can direct you towards in the future if you have any questions. So thanks for watching. Until the next video, my name's Josh, signing off.